Let's go camping, my friends. I've never done a solo wild camp before. I've never slept in a bivvy bag before. And I've also got a new inflatable mattress. So fingers crossed this is all going to go smoothly. It's February. I've got a 9 kilogram backpack on and about 7 miles to walk. So I'm not going to do much filming on the way. Let's just get to camp. I swear there's a rule that for every kilogram you add to your backpack, the walk feels 10 miles longer. Although we have got a bit of soft ground from a lot of rain recently. So I said I wasn't going to film much because I needed to get cracking on the walk, and it was only at this point, still before the halfway mark, where, although this is a really cool shot in my opinion, I didn't film anything from that point onwards because I realised just how slow my progress was. And so after some time, we'll say, I eventually found myself over the hills and far away in a bit of remote woodland, and immediately found how soft the ground truly was. After stuffing my face with a protein bar, I began setting up camp. As you can see, it was 5 degrees, so not too bad. I've certainly been in worse temperatures in the great outdoors. And this is probably the first and biggest benefit I see of bivvy camping, the unbelievably quick and easy setup process, followed very closely by the unbelievably low profile and stealthy nature of it all. I can honestly say this process took less than 3 minutes, including inflating the mat and unrolling the sleeping bag. And I don't say that to act as if I was in a serious rush here, I'm just highlighting the sheer simplicity of it. And you can imagine if you've had a long day hiking or it's windy and rainy on a hillside, being able to get a shelter up this quickly and simply will be an absolute blessing. Well, I can honestly say the difference in just getting in a little tiny bit of shelter, shielded from the wind, is unbelievable. I am absolutely, right now, my moods and my motivation and attitude towards whether this is going to be successful has just gone from a straight up 50-50 to about 80%, I would say. I did a quick perimeter walk around my camp to see how visible it was, and I was very pleased to say that because of that ridiculously low profile of a bivvy bag, it felt very, very well disguised without any further camouflaging techniques. We are starting to lose light pretty rapidly, so I'm going to get myself some food on the go, by which I mean I'm going to boil a bit of water in that pot. We've got a pot noodle and some fancy noodles in a pot. Bit of bread, bit of cheese. I think we'll just start with that, see how I feel, and maybe have that one a little bit later on. I've put the thermometer right next to the opening of the bivvy, and you can see we are rapidly dropping towards zero. I made a little bit of a blunder here with my Trangia setup. I used the frying pan / pot lid to make a nice stable heatproof base to light the stove on. And of course that meant that I then didn't have a lid to go on the boiling water, which made a relatively slow to boil stove take even longer, especially in the temperature and that little bit of wind blowing through. I wasn't using it as a heatproof base so much because I was concerned about a risk of fire in the very damp ground here. I was more concerned about the whole thing toppling over or just generally being unstable on the undulating ground. I had really wanted to get this part of the camp over and done with before it got too dark, but unfortunately, as you can see by the fact that I had to put my phone light on, it just wasn't to be. I knew that as it got later and darker, this flame was going to get a more and more visible source of light to give away my camp location. But I will admit it was so nice to be sat next to it and able to warm my fingers up in the peripheral heat that it was putting out. Look at that, plenty of cheese and a pot noodle there, that'll do me fine. Of course, as soon as this was ready to eat, the weather gave me a very brief shower just to remind me who was really in charge of this camp. Well, my friends, this is it, it's actually happening. My first overnight in a bivvy, my first solo wild camp, and my first camp in proper wild woods, and my first camp with my inflatable mattress. And I've got to say, I've loved the experience so far. Look at this shot right here. Now that is a contented lad if ever I saw one. I also at this moment discovered a very simple trick to have a very low visibility lighting situation, which was to use my selfie stick tripod to hang my camping light off, so there's barely any sideways light and it was all coming down into the usable space. Here's something I've noticed that I don't like. The reflective strips on the bivvy are only small, but they are super reflective. I apologise for what I imagine is an absolutely appalling recording angle here, but here I am on my first ever solo wild camp, actually set up in bed in the bivvy, and I think I will take the waterproof coat off at least. And you know what, I've been in here for maybe 20 minutes and I feel as if the whole temperature of the bivvy in my body is noticeably warmed up, although that might just be the effect of being out of that constant wind for a prolonged period. Well, my friends, I just decided I was going to come out and do a little bit of photography of the night sky because it's unbelievably clear. And of course, it's immediately started raining. But on a serious note, hopefully you can see me. This is so cozy. I absolutely am loving this. This is brilliant. If it is a little bit haunting, you may be able to hear that rain on the bivvy right now. And well, it's in some ways pleasant and cozy to be safely out of it while the weather's raging away outside. You can probably imagine, in my mind, it's become very clear that having a tarp and a bivvy would be a far superior setup, because as soon as there's any bad weather, even just a little bit of it, because I don't want to fetch wet clothes into the bivvy, which is already potentially going to be a magnet for condensation, I basically have absolutely no option other than get in here and be sheltered. Here's a POV shot so you can get that real life bivvy in the rain in the woodland experience. And if you look at this and think, yeah, perhaps I'll just stay in a nice warm bed in a house, then I'll be honest, I won't be offended if that's your opinion. Walking around these woods and knowing how many miles away I was from anywhere substantial really, it definitely felt a little bit more remote and isolated than the other woodlands from my last failed trip with somebody tracking me down with a torch. Link in the description down below to that video. You can see even in this shot just how reflective some of those tags on the bivvy are. I think it was probably this moment when it was about 7 o'clock and I was settling down that I realised just how much better this will be in the longer nights of the spring and summer. Okay, my friends. I thought that I was well out of the way of any people. Oh man, I'm so disappointed. I was so happy and so settled, you know. And I've got absolute disappointment right now. Yeah, there's somebody literally walking around with a torch. Hopefully you can see me there. So it's now 10 p.m. The temperature's risen slightly to 3 degrees, as it did just briefly edge onto the 0 on the thermometer, which I did not like, so I'm glad about that. All of the lights have now died down, and it was only after letting my eyes adjust to the dark for about 40 minutes, so I had the best night vision that I ever get, that I can absolutely confirm there's definitely somebody in the field, and on the far side there was, possibly still is, somebody walking around in circles in the woods. I don't know, maybe they're camping as well, but I'm definitely keeping everything to the absolute minimum that I can here. Right, my friends, excuse my voice. It's just gone 11 p.m. and unbelievably I've already been asleep for the best part of an hour, as far as I can tell. I've got my alarm set for 4 a.m. I know that's very early, but very often I wake up at 5 a.m. as part of my normal day-to-day life. So I just wanted to get out of here well and truly, be clear of all of this area and back on the roads before 5, 6 a.m. Just so I'm not walking around with a light on in potential farmland and stuff as the farmers are coming out and thinking, why is there somebody wandering around at this hour in our fields and livestock? One of the biggest problems I can see with a bivvy is the condensation build-up. At the time it didn't cause me any discomfort and I slept about 4 hours over the course of the night, but I also knew all my stuff needed airing out. So I'm literally half sat in a sleeping bag in the middle of the woods looking up, the sky's cleared again and I'm just seeing the stars through the trees. This is fantastic. I don't know if this will come across on the camera because it's not at ground level, but a bit higher up through the trees it's really picked up the wind. Listen to that. So I just lay there for a while, listening to the sound of the wind in the trees, occasionally hearing a creak and a crack above me, and then I got this message come through from my girlfriend, and I started to wonder whether I should head back early as 3 a.m. was rapidly approaching. Was I really going to get back to sleep and then wake up at 4 a.m. and start walking anyway? So after a while, I decided, yeah, let's go for it. So slightly earlier than anticipated, I packed up my tent with the minimum possible light, just in case there were campers only a few 100 feet away, and I did try and be clever here and wrap everything up with the sleeping bag and the air mattress inside, but the air mattress itself just needed properly deflating individually, so I couldn't quite do a rapid getaway like that, but it's another lesson learned. I really thoroughly enjoyed this night. I slept for around 4 hours during the course of it, and most importantly, it's massively boosted my confidence at doing this after my disastrous first attempt at a solo camp. Although, I've definitely also learnt the positives and the negatives of the bivvy bag, and I can certainly see where a tent, or at the very least a tarp as well, would be extremely useful. For example, if it had just absolutely hammered down with rain all night and I was just trapped inside trying to cook a pot noodle. After my camp was all packed away, I had a quick scout around just to make sure, and it was definitely in a leave no trace state. I even ruffled up that ground litter there just to make sure that it looked as if nobody had ever passed by. Absolutely wonderful stuff. The end of a very good night, but the start of a very windy big walk. Thank you so much for tuning in, my friends. I hope you've enjoyed this moment from my life in the great outdoors. I'd like to thank my PayPal supporters, channel members, Facebook subscribers, super thankers, and all the other ways you can support this channel. That's A. Sanford, T. Seymour, The Yacht Captain, Fufarito, David D, Kaz G, and Sean B. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed this video and what I've got lined up for the future. Keep it tent-worthy, keep it interesting, have a fantastic day, and of course, my friends, farewell.